And I believe I am live. And if that is the case, then I want to welcome you to our 80th edition of our live broadcast every Saturday and Sunday here on Facebook and YouTube. We've been doing this since COVID-19. As a result of COVID-19, we now broadcast from our studios here at D&J Studios, which is our home. D for Divina and J for yours truly, Jose. And we're here Saturday and Sunday. And this is program number 80. I continue to broadcast Saturday nights on WBUR, the very best in Afro-Latin music. We've been doing it for 45 and a half years. And you're more than welcome to join us tonight from 10 to 3 o'clock Eastern Time on WBUR.org if you want to listen on the internet, or if you're here in the area on radio 90.9 FM. And one of my field producers, Ryan Newfall, says, I see you and hear you, which is good news, which means, therefore, all of you can see me and hear me. My guest for today, Tomás Ávila, saludito, buenas tardes. My guest for today is a dear friend. He's an educator, percussionist, band leader, Víctor Rendón, a veteran of the Latin music scene. He'll be joining us in about 40 minutes or so after we hear some music. We are looking forward to a great conversation with him. And my guest tomorrow will include Victor and his wife. They will are part of the V Project workshop led by our dear friend Mike Viñas. So there'll be about 10 guests joining me tomorrow as we talk about their use of technology there in 2020 and how they're using it now in 2021 as far as musicians and educators as well. So stay tuned right where you are. Share this with as many friends as possible. Let's make it so that even though we're physically distant from each other, we can connect as a community using technology as a way of connecting with each other. Estrella Vázquez, saluditos a ti también. Y saludos, bienvenidos otra vez más a otra edición, el número 80 del programa Con Salsa aquí en vivo en Facebook y YouTube. El nombre mío es José Mazó, desde nuestros estudios de DJ, D para mi querida Divina, que se encuentra arriba, J para este servidor, José Mazó. Y estamos aquí los sábados de 4 a 6 y los domingos de 4 a 6. Saluditos, viene desde New Jersey, Pedro Bonilla. Saluditos, Pedro, un abrazo. Lorraine dice, can you play some charanga? Well, let's see. So today my guest, hoy mi invitado es Víctor Rendón, quien es un educador, percusionista, director de banda y también una persona envuelta en un proyecto que se llama el V Project Workshop. Ellos serán mis invitados para el día de mañana, pero hoy estaré hablando con Víctor sobre su trayectoria, sobre su interés en la música y sus proyectos musicales antes del programa de mañana. Así que quédense ahí donde están porque estamos celebrando la música afroantillana aquí en el programa Con Salsa, como lo hacemos cada fin de semana. And as part of this weekend, as many of you know, this is Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday weekend. And thus, as we start off the program, we're going to pay tribute to him. And last weekend, I had as one of my guests, pianist Eric Figueroa, one of the founding members of Patato. And in the beginning and the end of his intervention, he shared a universal blessing in Spanish. And I was so taken by it, so was my wife Divina, that I decided that for today, we're going to start off with that blessing in the voice of Eric Figueroa. El último domingo, la semana pasada, tuve como invitados en reconocimiento y en homenaje al gran Ángel Cachete Maldonado, a Eric Figueroa, pianista, fundador de Matacumbele, y él comenzó su intervención con una bendición universal y terminó su intervención con una bendición universal, la misma. Y yo le pedí permiso entonces para compartirla de nuevo con ustedes para comenzar el programa de hoy, ya que la primera parte del programa se la vamos a dedicar a la memoria del gran luchador de derechos civiles, el Dr. Martin Luther King. So we're going to start off the program with our dear friend, the one and only Eric Figueroa, as we pay tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King. And then, of course, we'll have some great music as well. So stay tuned, stay right where you are. No se vayan. Remember, share this, compartan.
La bendición universal, ¿verdad? Dice, en el nombre de la creación divina, de nuestros ancestros, de nosotros que estamos en la tierra, de aquellos que están por venir, que hagan el bien y el Espíritu Santo. Amén.
Amén.
Y lo digo de esa manera, me siento así, que nosotros estamos protegidos y dirigido por muchos de nuestros ancestros, por muchos de nuestros amigos, de personas que han pasado por nuestras vidas, que le tenemos que dar luz de alguna manera, porque la diferencia entre ellos y nosotros es que nosotros tenemos cuerpo para poder expresarnos, pero también algún día vamos a ser espíritu también. ¿Entiendes? So,
I'm a young black man doing all that I can to stand. Oh, but when I look around and I see what's being done to my kind every day, I'm being hunted as prey. My people don't want no trouble. We've had enough struggle. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. I just wanna live.
Introduction to I Have a Dream, written and read by Dr. Dorothy I. Height.
I'm Dorothy Height, the chair and the president emerita of the National Council of Negro Women. In 1939, when Marian Anderson was barred from presenting a concert in Constitution Hall in the nation's capital, the insult reverberated throughout the world. First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt intervened until arrangements were made for Marian Anderson to sing at the Lincoln Memorial. On Easter Sunday, standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, Marian Anderson sang, and her first words were, "My country, 'tis of thee." The audience burst into thunderous applause. I thought I would never again witness a higher moment when the collective conscience of America was awakened. But I was wrong. 24 years later, Martin Luther King Jr. stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and, reciting from the anthem's first stanza, said, "From every mountainside, let freedom ring." It was a riveting sermon that struck the conscience of America, taking its place as one of the most famous speeches in human history. Many naturally assumed that Martin Luther King Jr. had initiated the March on Washington. In fact, it was an idea first conceived by A. Philip Randolph, the distinguished labor leader, whose threat of a similar march many years earlier had led to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signing Executive Order 8802, which established the Fair Employment Practices Commission. By 1963, the country had broken faith and conditions were getting worse rather than better. A. Philip Randolph deemed it time to issue the call for a march that would not be denied. 250,000 people answered the call. They came from all walks of life, all races, all income levels, all creeds. Indeed, they came from all over the world. Buses by the hundreds converged on the nation's capital. As a young woman, I had been involved in the United Christian Youth Movement, organized to harness the optimism of Christian youth to build a new world. And when I looked over the crowd as Martin Luther King Jr. finished his speech, I felt that at last we were all united in creating a new society. King had done more than deliver a speech. He had sent out a challenge to the world. It was as if he had seen into the hearts and souls of people everywhere and touched their deep longing for a shared destiny, a common purpose, a sense of mission. He made us see how we shall overcome, black and white together. For days and weeks and years afterwards, the power of his words reached more and more people, as radio and television stations all over the country played his speech at every opportunity. It is a blessing that through the efforts of Coretta Scott King, the essence of Martin Luther King Jr.'s message has been institutionalized. Every King holiday, when the speech is broadcast, recited, or quoted, is a moment to remind us that King had a dream, but he was not assassinated for dreaming, but because he dared to challenge the system. The speech came from a soul force, a love and a commitment to nonviolence that will continue to be relevant to the human experience.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. That one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is a faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Y sigue la salsa con Salsa y José Mazo.
Bueno, mi gente, ahí escucharon,
Y sigue la salsa con Salsa
en homenaje al fenecido ícono de la lucha de derechos civiles, el doctor Reverendo Martin Luther King Jr., en celebración de su natalicio, que fue ayer, viernes, día 15 de enero. Este fin de semana aquí en los Estados Unidos se celebra el fin de semana del doctor Martin Luther King. Lamentablemente, debido a COVID-19, no lo podemos hacer en comunidad juntos, pero sí lo podemos hacer por medio de la tecnología. Así que esa es mi aportación para esta tarde, para cada uno de nosotros poder celebrar este legado de este tremendo ser humano, el doctor Reverendo Dr. Martin Luther King. Escucharon sus palabras, escucharon la música para comenzar de Rey Barreto, el fenecido conguero puertorriqueño, con una selección musical que toca sobre la libertad. Se titula Freedom Jazz Song, originalmente grabada por Eddie Harris con Ray Vega en el solo de trompeta del disco New World Spirit Ancestral Messages. Concluimos con Poncho Sánchez de su disco titulado Freedom Sound, canción originalmente grabada por los Jazz Crusaders con la participación de Wilton Felder y Wayne Henderson de los Jazz Crusaders en esa selección musical. Así que de ahí vamos a pasar entonces a una propuesta nueva que acaba de salir de nuestro querido amigo Manolo Mairena, quien será nuestro invitado el próximo domingo aquí en el programa Con Salsa. Y el próximo sábado tendremos a Lidia Lieberman y Willy Rodríguez, que no son músicos per se, aunque estudiaron música, pero dirigen una compañía de promoción y vamos a platicar con ellos sobre la promoción en esta época de 2021 y el resultado COVID-19. So we heard some music. There you heard Ray Barretto. And then at the end you heard Poncho Sanchez, Ray Barretto doing one with Ray Vega on the solo, during the trumpet solo from the album Ray Barretto, New World Spirit, Ancestral Messages. You heard the Eddie Harris song, Freedom Jazz Dance. And then we concluded after having heard the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we heard Poncho Sanchez, Freedom Sound, the original selection recorded by Jazz Crusaders, this one by Poncho Sanchez, including Wilton Felder and Wayne Henderson of the Jazz Crusaders. Here's a new one, our dear friend Manolo Mairena. He'll be our guest a week from tomorrow, and the song is titled Se Busca una Sandunguerita. Escuchemos la nueva propuesta musical de costarricense Manolo Mairena.
Anuncio clasificado. Se busca. ¡Epa! Yo busco una muchacha sandunguerita, inteligente, que sea bonita y que le guste el vacilón, que tenga todo el amor que uno necesita para yo quererla toda la vida y regalarle mi corazón. Que él sepa bien que ella será la consentida, la reina, la más querida, la dueña de mi pasión, y que me quiera tal así como yo soy, alegre, bullanguero, divertido y soñador. Yo busco una muchacha sandunguerita, inteligente, que sea sencilla, que le guste el vacilón. Sepa bien que ella será la consentida, la reina, la más querida, la dueña de mi pasión, y que me quiera tal así como yo soy, alegre, bullanguero, divertido y soñador. Yo busco una muchacha sandunguerita, inteligente, que sea sencilla, que me quiera tal como soy. Oye, que le guste la rumba, que salga conmigo de noche, que no me pelee y que le guste el bebé. ¿Cómo es que dice el coro? pura vida. Oye, en el barrio le dicen de esta manera, sandunguera, que se te va por encima de la cintura.
Tal como soy.
Busco una sandunguerita. Manolo Mairena, oriundo de Costa Rica, estará con nosotros el próximo domingo en una semana como nuestro invitado aquí en el programa Con Salsa. Así que los invito a que estén con nosotros next weekend on Sunday. Our guest will be Manolo Mairena, who you just heard there. That new single just came out. Recording artist who was recorded with Pedrito Martinez, with Gonzalo Grau, who else? Willie Torres, one of my favorites right here from the area. From Costa Rica, lives in the central Massachusetts area. Manolo Mairena, one of the great soneros and percussionists. We'll have a chance to talk with him a week from tomorrow. Today, though, my guest will be Víctor Rendón. He's been backstage patiently listening to the music, getting ready to join us momentarily after we hear some of his music. And speaking about guests, hablando de invitados, David Romero, make a list. So next Saturday, we'll have Lydia Lieberman and Willie Rodriguez. As I mentioned, they head up a promotional firm and have been responsible for a number of Grammy Award-winning albums. We will talk to them about that. Manolo Mairena. Spoke to Larry Harlow, El Judío Maravilloso, today. He'll be joining me hopefully during the month of February or early March. And he sends his regards. Miguel Senón and Luis Perdomo have a new album out of boleros. They'll be joining me on Sunday, January 31st. Humberto Ramirez, the great trumpet player, will be joining me as well in the next couple weeks. Anthony Carrillo and Richie Flores will be making a weekend of Los Hijos del Tambor. And they'll be joining me. So I will give you the date for that as well. We have Antonio Toñito Vázquez and Pablo Padín, who are fixing their calendars so they can be our guests on Con Salsa. And Benjamin Lapidus, who has a new book out, will be joining me on a weekend of Valentine's weekend, because we're going to be celebrating Típica 73. We'll have Johnny Dandy Rodriguez and some of the members of Típica 73 joining us on that weekend. And the great young percussionist Daniel Diaz from Puerto Rico has also agreed to join me as we work out a date for him during the month of February or March. So those are some of the guests that will be coming. And I've got a few more that we're in contact, but we haven't squared the date as of yet, but once we have them, I will share them with you. But at least you know some of the ones who will be joining us in the month of February, the remainder of January, and then into March. Saludos por aquí para nuestro amigo Johnny Giraldo, quien tuvo como invitado este fin de semana. Mira, Raquel Ortiz, saludos desde Palm Coast, Florida, otra vez. Ya es invierno, estaría hasta abril. Bueno, qué alegría. Felicidades. Mencionando a Johnny Giraldo, mi hermano y mi mentor, tuvo como invitado a Gus Colón, el joven trompetista que ya es mayor de edad, pero no tuve la oportunidad de ver el show, Johnny, así que espero poder verlo en algún lugar donde tú lo tengas archivado. Por aquí tenemos a Octavio, saludos José desde Medellín, Colombia, gracias mi gente allá en Medellín. Ato Viejo, mi restaurante favorito al cruzar el Intercontinental, el favorito. Algún día, si Dios permite, llevaré a mi querida esposa divina a Colombia solamente para ir a Medellín, desayunar, almorzar, cenar y regresar a Boston, porque la comida es exquisita en Medellín y especialmente allá en Ato Viejo. Por aquí, David Romero dice, nice, yes, the list is getting, thanks to you, my brother, and there's a few others that haven't responded yet that I'm working on, but you're the one that gave me the inspiration, so you'll see who they are. Norma González, saluditos, muchas bendiciones para ti también, así que estaremos presentes. Pues miren, so the person that I have backstage, Víctor Rendón, first and foremost, you know, we always think about our musicians when it comes to Afro-Latin music coming from the New York area, that they've migrated either from Cuba or Dominican Republic or from Puerto Rico, but the New York is where they were raised, or they became infatuated with this great music of ours called Afro-Latin music, Afro-Cuban music, Afro-Antillan music, whatever title you want to give it. But sometimes they come from the West, as some of us go to the East. You heard the story of David Romero, who was born in New York, raised in New Jersey, and found himself going west to find his career in Los Angeles, performing with a number of groups, including Poncho Sanchez and Earth, Wind & Fire, before landing and settling in Las Vegas. So here's a Puerto Rican from New York who goes west. So now we're going to have a Mexican-American who goes east, and that's going to be Víctor Rendón. And Victor has recorded several albums that many of you may have not heard, but they are stellar performances. And the first one we're going to hear is a track from an album titled Havana Blues. And it's Armando Rodriguez and Víctor Rendón, which was one of his first groups, arranged by none other than Chico O'Farrill. And this was sort of like set the stage as to what we will be hearing from our dear friend Víctor Rendón. And we will be talking with him, of course, about his career and what he's doing, not only as a musician, but also as an educator at Lehman College. Saluditos por aquí de parte de Lalo Pérez, que dice Texas in the house. Thank you, Texas, for being with us. Appreciate that. Eduardo Valenzuela, nuestro amigo y hermano, saludos para ti y tu familia en el año 21. También Edwin Hernández, saludos José, que nos sigue deleitando con tu gran selección musical. Muchas gracias, Edwin. Se te quiere. Compartan esto con sus amistades, por favor. Share this with your friends so that they can become part of the Consalsa family. I'm on live Saturday and Sunday from 4 to 6 here on Facebook and YouTube. I prefer YouTube. Divina's upstairs watching YouTube at this moment. And all of my programs have been archived on YouTube. So in case you missed some, go into my channel, Jose Mason. You can just spend time looking at all the shows. But here's Havana Blues. Enjoy this one.
Ayude a prevenir el COVID-19 con distanciamiento social. Use el teléfono, FaceTime o mensajes en línea para comunicarse con sus amigos y familiares. Quédese en su casa el mayor tiempo posible. No se reúna en grupos. Manténgase a una distancia de 6 pies o 2 metros de las demás personas. Evite estrechar las manos o dar abrazos. Y por favor, continúe lavándose las manos con frecuencia. Visite mass.gov/COVID-19 o llame al 211. Un mensaje del Departamento de Salud Pública de Massachusetts.
All right. Saludos, Paul Carlin. It's good to see you, my friend. Looking forward to. So, a couple of things before we get into what we heard, and I bring my guests on. A few saludos here. Johnny Giraldo, thank you for sending me the link and for your conversation with Gus Colon. He says here that you spoke to him about him coming to Boston, and I'm glad that you made it possible in your conversation to touch base about him coming to Boston. He was the first one I brought to Boston in 1973 before I jumped full steam into doing promotions. I brought Gus Colon and his band. They were young kids. And then about a month or two later, I brought Rafi Levi La Selecta and Andy Harlow in his orchestra. And Andy Harlow at that time had Ángel Cachete Maldonado on congas. That was summer of 1973. Nilda Quijano, saluditos, vivió aquí en la ciudad de Boston y ahora vive en Boquerón. Felicidades a ti, Nilda, el abrazo. José Villafañe, gracias a ti. José lets us know that Roberto Roena's birthday is today, 81 years young. God bless him, one of my favorites. And yes, we're doing some Latin jazz today, big band Latin jazz. And you heard some of that with Víctor Rendón and the Bronx Conexión Latin Jazz Big Band. There's another saludo that I want to respond to up here if I can find it. Give me a second, ladies and gentlemen. Saida Cruz, saluditos a ti. También tengo saludos. Lo voy a encontrar. Porque quiero dejarles saber, responder a la pregunta que me hizo la persona. Así que con el permiso de ustedes, como saben, estamos este fin de semana celebrando el fin de semana de Martin Luther King, como también tenemos como invitado a Víctor Rendón. Aquí es la pregunta. Tony Figueroa, thank you so much. Yes, we need to keep his legacy alive, especially now more than ever, because of things that are happening around us here in the United States. And at the same time, thank you for asking about me. So I finished my treatment, 33 days of radiation treatment, my shots and things of that nature. I'm now in the recovery phase for the next couple of months. Then in April, they will test me and to make sure to see what the first results are of my treatment. And then in November is when we're really going to know if everything went well. So thank you for your prayers and thank you for asking and thank you for keeping me in mind. David Romero, congratulations to you as you continue on your way to enjoying a healthy life and a quality of life that you so deserve. But God is good and God is great. And that's the reason why I started off with Eric Figueroa's, blessing, because I think that blessing says it all. Bien, por aquí, Johnny Giraldo habla sobre sí, el pequeño Johnny. Tenía 12 años cuando tocó con Gus. Cuando llegó aquí era un nene. Yo lo vi y yo dije, ¿cómo este chamaquito toca tan bueno? Pero de cualquier manera, miren, yo voy a dejarles saber que en las próximas semanas tenemos varios invitados, como yo ya había dicho. Pero más que nada, el día de hoy estoy sumamente feliz de que esta persona haya aceptado mi invitación. Es una persona que tiene una trayectoria sumamente rica en experiencias musicales y también su aportación a nuestra música. Ya ustedes escucharon parte de esta aportación por medio de la música que tocó en su banda grande, ¿no? Su big band de Latin Jazz. Así que vamos a dar la bienvenida aquí. Vamos a traer a Víctor Rendón. Víctor, bienvenido a tu casa, aquí el programa con Salsa, mi casa, tu casa, mi casa, porque somos, aunque tú estás en Nueva York y yo aquí en Boston, se parece como que estuviéramos en el mismo lugar, tú con tu colección de discos y fotos,
sí,
y libros y instrumentos, y yo aquí con lo mío. Qué alegría verte, mi hermanito. Gracias.
Igualmente, te quiero dar las gracias por invitarme y well, I'm going to be going between English and Spanish.
No te preocupes, eso es parte de lo que hay.
Hablo español, pero no
sí.
aquí.
Tú navegas como tú puedas.
My Spanish not too good looking something. But I want to say that I didn't know that you were going through treatments. I want to wish you the best, and I'll be praying for you. That's the first thing. And thank you for inviting me. It's such an honor to be here and to see a person who's supporting our music, in all areas, salsa, Latin jazz, big band, small groups, big groups, everything. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
It's great music. Thank you very much. And you're getting some welcome. I don't have one of those machines. I tell all my guests, I don't have those machines that applaud when people come on. So the people have to give their applause like Mario does in Washington, D.C. There he is, giving you a round of applause de bienvenida. Víctor dice, bendiciones y bienvenido, maestro Tocayo, desde Florida, un boricua.
Gracias.
Le da la bienvenida. Antes de entrar de lleno, before we go into your career and what you're doing and things of that nature, we've got to talk about the songs that I shared. The first one was Havana Blues. Mm-hmm. Who arranged that for you?
Okay. First of all, that tune was recorded in 1994, released in 1998. And even now when I hear it, it sounds fresh. I've recorded many things over the year, but that tune is just something about it. That was composed and arranged by none other than Chico O'Farrill. Arturo O'Farrill played in my first band, which was the Armando Rodriguez Víctor Rendón Latin Jazz Orchestra. I'm talking about 1990, 1991. And one day we went out to eat, and the question popped up, you think your father will arrange for us? I said, let me talk to him. And it took about a year to really hook it up, but we finally hooked up. We went to Chico O'Farrill's place, in the West End, and we asked him, can you do 4 arrangements for us? 2 for big band, and 1, if you can, do an original, which turned out to be that. And I had 2 other, cover tunes to. And he did. He agreed to it, and it was beautiful. He, beautiful person. And he actually conducted this session. That was at NOLA Studio, right next to Carnegie Hall.
Wow.
Beautiful place. And if I can go on, that was like the cream of the crop. If I can remember, the trumpets were like Victor Paz, Manny Duran, Armando, Jim Seeley. On the saxophones, Jerry Dodgen, which plays with many jazz players. Enrique Fernandez. I'm forgetting. Okay, I don't want to mumble. And on trombones, we had Papo Vasquez, David Chamberlain, Jerry Chamberlain, and Earl McIntyre. On piano, we had Arturo O'Farrill, Andy Gonzalez, and on congas, we had Giovanni Hidalgo and Johnny Almendra. And that was the band, besides myself on drums.
So, Johnny Almendra, Giovanni fue el que hizo el solo de congas. Arturo O'Farrill, el hijo de Chico, en el piano.
Sí,
composición de Chico O'Farrill y arreglo de Chico O'Farrill, con esa cantidad de músicos que acaba de mencionar. Pero el grupo se llamaba Armando Rodríguez y Víctor Rendón. ¿Qué tocaba Armando?
Trompeta. Todavía toca. We teach together at Lehman College.
Así que son profesores, son amigos y profesores allá en Lehman College.
Yeah, we went our separate ways with bands, but we still play. And at the college, we're always doing functions and everything. But as band leaders, we went our separate ways.
So what a beginning of, in the 1990s to have Chico O'Farrill be the arranger, the composer, the conductor of the recording, to have his son playing piano with you, to have Giovanni there, to have Andy Gonzalez on bass, Vitín Paz. I mean, you must have been going like, pinch myself.
Oh, it was like I've told this story before. It was like a dream. I was like, I didn't know it was really happening, And it was Arturo that really hooked me up with the band, because that was basically the Chico O'Farrill band, with the exception of a few players here and there. But that was a dream, because I always tell people it was a live recording where you go in there, everybody's together, and you play together from beginning to end. Nowadays we have, punching in and, edits and all this stuff, but that was live. That was live. What you hear is what went down that day.
So, and was that one take, or did you do several takes of it?
We did 2 takes, but we took the first one.
So the first take was the one.
Yeah, again, I told the story before where we did the take. We went to the control room, and everything sounded good, And I looked at the Chico. He says, Victor, you like it? He was always asking me, do you like it? And I said, of course I like it. It sounds good. But can we do another one just in case, something goes wrong, whatever. So we did another one. And then we did the other tune. Same thing happened. First time through, boom, it was perfect. We went to the control room. We listened to it. It was fine. can we do another one? We did another one, and both of them came perfect. We kept the first takes because they had a little bit more energy, you know.
Sure. Yeah, the first time. Yeah, claro. No, me encanta. Mira, tenemos saludos por aquí. Mario Villalobos dice, encendido. Egui Catrillo, nuestro amigo, te manda saludos. Egui, saludito a ti. Felicidades.
Saludos.
A Egui Catrillo también. Entonces, vamos a hablar, let's talk a little bit about how is it that a Mexican-American winds up in New York City? Where did you start? Where were you born? When did music become part of you? Because you weren't always into Latin music. You were a rock and roller at some time.
Oh, yeah. Yes. So, matter of fact, there's a picture of me. I don't know if you see it, with long hair and a beard, you know, my hippie days. Well, I started playing drums in the school system, you know, 5th grade. You know, I was in the band and all that stuff. And my first teacher was actually a drum teacher. And
where was this?
Oh, yes. This is in Robstown, Texas. Robstown, Texas is about 5 miles outside of Corpus Christi, Texas. And it's, for those of you that might know where Corpus Christi is, it's basically on the coast, roughly about 120 miles from the border of Mexico. So that's where I grew up. And I actually wanted to be... in that area we had Mexicano music and Tex-Mex music. We had country western, rock and roll, and there was some jazz in Corpus Christi, but I was too young to really be in that scene. But my teacher always used to play jazz for me. So, and then he used to play some Latino things, but it was not really New York salsa. It was like Mexican, what we used to call música tropical. Groups like La Sonora Santanera, which was almost like a copy of La Sonora Matancera, which was Cuban. And I used to hear música tropical on the radio because my mom used to play some radio station in the morning, and I would hear like quizás, those type of tunes, Perez Parado stuff. And I didn't know those were Cuban groups, And I think I used to hear the Sonora Matancera also, but I thought they were Mexican groups from Mexico, and they were, because they were living there at the time. So my concept was that, okay, here in Texas we play polkas and we play rancheras, and over there in Mexico they play música tropical mostly, which to a large extent is true, or was true. So I always had that Latino tinge in me, but when I was a teenager, my outlet was the school band and rock and roll, because that's what was happening at the time. So I was playing. I was into Ginger Baker, the drummer
for Cream,
the Rare Earth and all that stuff. So, and I had pretty good technique because I was, I studied, so I did well. But then one day I heard Santana, because I was in the Columbia Record Club. I don't know if you ever belonged to that, where you used to get a record every
hold on a second. Let's explain that, because there's a lot of young people. Nuestro amigo está hablando en este momento que él fue miembro de lo que se llamaba el Columbia Record Club. Columbia Record Club era donde uno pagaba como una suscripción y le enviaban cada mes discos del sello Columbia a su hogar. Y de esa manera tenía un repertorio de diferentes discos que uno conseguía, ¿no? Mi madre fue parte de ese club allá en Puerto Rico, y por ende, esa razón, tengo un sinnúmero de discos que son de mi madre, que yo heredé, que son discos buenísimos de la era del jazz y big band y de la vocalista, Diana Washington y Nancy Wilson y toda esa cantante. Entonces, you started getting these records as part of the Columbia Record Club, and what would come in?
And one day I saw this name Santana. I said, well, that looks like a Mexican name. They turned out to be, the first Santana album. So then I heard like a rock and roll mixed with Latino and singing in Spanish. I was like, wow, and I just totally flipped out. So that was my menu at the time, listening to Sonora Matancera, Perez Prado, Santana. I didn't know anything about New York salsa yet, After my first year in college in Kingsville, Texas, I heard about the music school at Denton, Texas, which is now the University of North Texas. So wanting to be a jazz drummer still, and I still want to, I'm still a jazz drummer, but, I was looking forward to it. I went to North Texas, and I was living in the dorms, and as usual, I was playing my jazz like Woody Hermanson, Ken. And one day I was playing my Mexican stuff, or what I thought was a Mexican. It was Sonora Matancera. This guy from New Jersey comes into the room and tells me, check this out. And it was Ray Barretto Indestructible.
Wow.
Con llanto de cocodrilo. And that took me to another, like, wow, I couldn't believe it. People, this live rhythms, it was so strong and Latino, and again, singing in Spanish, and it's pure Spanish. It's not even mixed with English, So that's where my vision of eventually leaving Texas to go to New York came about. At first, I wasn't sure because when I graduated from college, I spent a year playing in the club 6 nights a week, sometimes 7. I didn't know whether to stay there, teach, or become a band director, or go to the West Coast, go to Florida, go to New York, or get into the Army. It was the summer of 1980. I was like 25 years old. I just couldn't decide what to do. Finally, one day, I just got in the Greyhound bus and I came to New York. And Armando Rodriguez, my friend, was already living here. So, I stayed for him a couple of days, and then, from there, it evolved.
So let's put pause for a second. So, Carlos Santana y el Latin rock, vamos a llamarlo así, Latin rock, ¿no?
Sí.
Ritmos afrocubanos con rock and roll y cantando en un mix de español con inglés, right?
Sí.
Carlos Santana, mexicano. Luego escuchas al gran Ray Barretto y de ahí adelante adicto a la música afrocubana, música afroantiana, lo que se llama ahora la salsa. Además de Barretto y ese disco Indestructible, ¿qué más escuchaste en ese momento? What else did you get hungry for? What else did you look for? What other albums came into your sphere that you said, holy cow?
Yeah, I was listening to Ray Barretto, Que Viva la Música, and of course, this guy, actually, I have some of those albums here in the shelf. He also turned me on to Willie Colon, El Malo, was that the title?
El Malo,
El Malo, Joe Batan, of course, some Tito Puente records, some Charlie Palmieri, Eddie Palmieri, the Son of Land music that came out like in 75, 76, I believe. So I started getting interested in that, but you couldn't buy the records just anywhere. There was a place in Dallas, one store that had like Fania records coming from New York. And there was a place in Austin, Guerrero Street, I remember. So whenever I would come down from, breaks in the school, I would always stop at Guerrero Street to this store where they used to have salsa records. So that was basically what got me started, until I got here. Then I got, exposed to more and more things.
So let's go back to when you got to New York and your buddy Armando brought you to the city. You spent some time with him. Who do you remember were the first artists that you saw perform, and where were the venues? Where were these places that you went? And what year was this? What year was this?
Talking about July of 1980. I remember seeing Tito Puente in the street playing. At Machito, I saw them. I saw Mongo Santamaria play out for, what was that, Jazzmobile. I saw them in the street.
Billy Taylor Jazzmobile.
Right. I remember going to the Madison Square Garden and seeing about 4 or 5 bands in one night. That was La Sonora Matancera, Eddie Palmieri, Johnny Pacheco, all on the same night for about $10 or whatever it was. I also used to go to the Village Gate, Monday nights.
Salsa Meets Jazz on Mondays.
Yeah. I saw there again La Sonora Matancera, El Timbalero, Mr. Afinque,
Willie Rosario,
a lot of bands. El Gran Combo, and then the just artists. So then Art Blakey would come and play with them, or Max Roach or somebody like that. So I was just going out every week, at least once a week, to see bands,
And did you perform immediately with any of the salsa bands, or what were you doing? What was your time spent?
When I first got here, I had to survive. So it's not like I was getting money from somewhere. So I started teaching. I worked in a store for a while, but that was just a stepping stone until I had like a provisional license to teach in the public school system. So eventually I was appointed to a position teaching, working with disabled children. So I did that. Actually, I put in 30 years.
Wow.
But throughout those 30 years, I was always playing with bands. The very first band that I played with was actually a Colombian band, una banda de Colombia called Los Grandes de Colombia, which was a very good experience for me because in Texas, we played cumbias like on the drums, chiquita, chiquita, chiquita. But the Colombianos, it's their music, really. I had to relearn how to play cumbias on los timbales, which is basically the same, but it's different combinations of cascara, cowbells, the cymbal, this and that. Later on, so I played there. Then I started playing with some Latin jazz groups. I used to go to Boys Harbor. Remember that school? And I actually took lessons there with Johnny Almendra, one of my teachers, Frankie Malabe, Mike Oyaso, who you know who he is, of course. Pablito Rosario was one of my teachers. Of course, Louis Bauzot. I mentioned Roberto Borel. I also played in Louis Bauzot's big band for almost 20 years. I believe he started that band in 1982, maybe 83, and I was there from the beginning all the way up to, I think, 2000. So about 18 or 19 years I was there. Throughout the 80s and 90s, I played with a lot of Latino jazz groups, salsa groups. I remember Joe Quijano calling me to do some things, stuff like that. Eventually, I ended up with a group called Grupo Latin Vibe. Tito's listening. And I played with them. That was straight ahead salsa. We did I think 3 albums, within 11 years or so. So that band was a good band because it was like it was a unit, when that downbeat came down, it was just like solid, so it was a very good group. I spent the mid 80s through about 89 playing in Queens. The musicians know what I'm talking about. Roosevelt Island. That was a strip of clubs there, Colombiano. And I backed up I used to work as a house drummer. So every night I would back up people like Daniel Santos, Bettina Averes, Raúl Marrero. They would come in, bring in the music. We'll rehearse like on Monday or Tuesday and then do a show for the rest of the week. That's invaluable experience that young people are not getting today, because those avenues are gone.
They are. Before we continue, there's some shout outs, but in the background, Café con Leche. Oigan esto. That's the great Carl Watson on baritone saxophone. The late Claudio Rodriguez on this one as well, on flugelhorn and trumpet. Chembo Poniel en las congas, Víctor Rendón en los timbales. Composición de Víctor, Café con Leche, arreglo y Joe Manosi. Víctor, entonces, de rockero, tú mencionaste Ginger Baker, de música latina mencionaste a Rey Barreto y mencionaste obviamente a Tito Puente, pero todos los maestros allá en Boys Harbor. ¿Qué influencia tuvieron ellos en el estilo que estamos escuchando ahí en el solo tuyo, Timbal? What influence did they have in that solo that we're hearing as you playing timbales? The guy that was playing rock, playing Ginger Baker, now playing timbales.
I spent a lot of time studying los maestros del timbal. The whole percussion thing. I spent a lot of time studying and transcribing some solos by Guillermo Barreto, Nicky Marrero, Manny Oquendo, Tito Puente. There's an album called Puente en Percussion, Top Percussion. I used to teach all day, come home, lie down on the floor. I would put my cassette player. We didn't have CD players yet. And I would listen to that Top Percussion album over and over again into the early evening. And I have little sketches. I used to, those are very involved albums. So I managed to transcribe some of them, those solos, but some of them were just too fast. Maybe now with the digital thing, I can slow it down. So I spent a lot of time, transcribing and studying those guys and emulating their style. So right now, as you were playing, I could hear some of those influences. Like I could hear the Puente. I could hear a little bit of Oreste Vilato in there. Kata, 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 that could be Manny Oquendo. Rokotoko, kata. That's like Orestes, So people say, well, you have to have your own voice. Well, yes, that's I've internalized, and hopefully I would like to think that it's already coming out as my own voice, especially in later years.
So in the background, Generoso, we're going to hear a little bit about this, but Giancarlo Anderson dice lo siguiente, miren. Giancarlo Anderson dice, fuerte abrazo a los dos. Víctor Rendón's book was my first timbale method book in Panama. Great to see you both. He has great memories of Latin Vibe. Let's talk about that book that Giancarlo speaks of.
Giancarlo's is now playing with Poncho Sanchez. Saludos, Giancarlo's. He used to live here. He played in Grupo Latin Vibe. Actually, I brought him into Grupo Latin Vibe because he went to Lehman College and he walked in and I put him on the spot. I said, okay, read this. It was Come Candela. He wrote it perfectly. So I told him, you're in. This is the book he's talking about. This is 1999. This is before computers. This book was it was handwritten, but it was very neatly with a ruler and a number 2 pencil. And it's got solos by Guillermo Barreto that I mentioned, Changuito, and Del Dueño, Herencia Rumbera, Nicky Marrero, Manny Oquendo, Tito Puente, Ray Romero, Indestructible, that very first
Ray
album,
Romero.
when one of my teachers too, and Orestes Vilato. So this is the book that he's talking about, 1999. It's out of print now, but I give it out as an educational resource to anybody who contacts me as a PDF.
There you go.
Thank you, Giancarlo.
Giancarlo. In the background, we're going to talk how we got to the Bronx Conexión. This one is titled Generoso, and obviously it's in tribute to the great Generoso trombone player for the great Benny More and his big band. Comes from the album titled True Flight, and this one features some great musicians on this one. Listen to this. On the piano, Joe Manozzi, who many of you may know. Joe was the pianist and trumpet player. He played more trumpet than piano with Típica 73. With Johnny Dandy Rodriguez and, of course, Sonny Bravo, the piano player. But he played pianos as well, Joe Manozzi. And then on trombone, we had the arranger of this composition, Rick Faulkner, who composed it, Generoso. Rick Faulkner on the trombone. And Johnny Dandy Rodriguez on el bongo. love it. I love it. The interplay between the trombone of Rick Faulkner and el bongo del gran John Danny Rodriguez Generoso del disco True Flight, Víctor Rendón, Bronx Connection Latin Jazz Big Band. Aquí dice David Romero, my respects to Victor. I don't think I've had the pleasure of meeting him, but I know of him. God bless you. So that's David Romero, a great friend, saying hello to you. And Margaret Summer, happy King Day to you as well, my dear friend. Michael Viñas, nos manda saludo. Michael will be our guest tomorrow. Listen.
Saludos, David.
I love it. Yeah, the sounds of the Bronx Connection Latin Jazz Big Band. So Claudio Raditi, we have to speak about him for a moment because he was a dear friend, Berklee College of Music graduate, passed away last year, I guess it was. Yeah, it was last year. And someone who's very special, played with Dizzy Gillespie United Nations Orchestra and played with so many different musicians. With Paquito Rivera, of course, led his own band. I had the chance of being with him here in Boston for his last performance, but he was your guest on that particular album. Talk to us a little bit about Claudio Roditi and his participation in that album, True Flight.
Yeah. I first met Claudio Roditi, must have been the mid-90s, playing with the Latin Jazz, a group called the Latin Jazz Coalition. And we did a concert here close to where I live at the amphitheater in Forest Park. And he was a guest. Him and Steve Toure were guests. So that's when I first met. And I got a sort of like the vibe with him, like the way kind of person he was. We went together, to the concert. I picked him up. So then I didn't see him until a few weeks before we did that recording, which was in 2015, actually. He came to Lehman College as a guest at the Lehman, the Johnny Pacheco Latin Jazz Festival. Mm-hmm. So I don't remember if I played with him that night because, I was a guest with the jazz band. But he was there. So I popped the question, Claudio, would you like to do some tracks with me? I'm in the process of finishing up my recording. And I offered him, X amount of dollars. And without even batting an eye, he said, yes, when do you want me? So he just did it. And when this was in New Jersey. And again, I got a sense of the kind of person that he was because he didn't come in with the attitude like I'm Claudio Roditi. Mm-hmm. He came in as like, what do you want me? He had the music. He had prepared some ideas already in his mind. And he was asking me if that was okay. And I'm like, you're Claudio Roditi. You can do whatever you want, And it was a beautiful experience just being around him and being around him as a musician. And he was already, I guess, I would think he was already like at least 70 or so, or late 60s. And I was thinking to myself, the courteous and the professional musicians are the ones that have a long life in music. Mm-hmm. The ones that bring their problems are not going to last very long. Mm-hmm. You have to be humble. You have to be able to work with people. And he was the epitome of that, and I have him to thank for that. And shortly after that, he got sick for several years before he passed,
Yeah, the great Claudio Roditi, a sweetheart, a true exactly. Sweetheart. Here are some salutations. Por aquí viene un saludo para ti desde Lakewood, California. Ceci and Johnny te dan el saludo desde California.
Saludos.
So, we heard Dandy Rodriguez on bongo. I know Dandy has you've done some things with Dandy for Martin Cohen. He's done some things at Lehman College with you. Let's talk about the Dandy connection, and also now let's move into Lehman College. You had been teaching in the New York public school system. When do you move into Lehman College?
I started teaching and going back to the public schools. I started teaching in the public school system as a sub. I started in the fall of 1980 when I just got here. I got placed in a position by 81, and I pretty much stayed there. While I was still teaching at the public school system in 2003, there was a position for a Latin Jazz director. What happened is that the dean of the school wanted to have a Latin Jazz band in the music department. So Armando was there playing in the concert band, and he gave our Havana Blues CD to the head of the department, who was at the time he's not there anymore, but his name is Dr. Shockett, and he was impressed by the album, and he offered this position to Armando. But Armando was hesitant to take it because he's a trumpet player. He's not, knowledgeable or fully knowledgeable about the percussion, bass, piano, the Latino thing. So he calls me and he tells me, there's a position opening at Lehman College. I'm going to recommend so-and-so. I'm not going to say the name. And then we can go and write for him, and, we can rehearse and write our music. And I was like, why should I write for somebody else? I haven't played my music, rehearse the band, and then he gets all the credit and he gets paid for it. So I just said, why don't you recommend me? And so they went back and forth, and we hung up. The next morning he calls me, says, something, you're right. Let's go talk to Dr. Shockett. And I went on, I don't remember what day it was, and we went there. We knocked on the door. We sat down, and Armando says, "This is Victor, my co-leader in the band that you heard." And the first word that comes out of Shockett's mouth was, "What's your highest level of education?" It could be pretty intimidating, right? But I've gone to school, so it was good. I said, right away I went to the University of North Texas. I got a bachelor's degree. I came to New York. I have a master's from Hunter College, blah, blah, blah. I have my books, this is that. And the next thing that comes out of his mouth is, when can you start? That was it. I got the pedigree. Yeah, the pedigree. It was 2003, the fall of 2003.
2003. And so was the Lehman College Latin Jazz Band and ensemble or percussion ensemble already there, or is that something you helped create?
No, we started from scratch. Okay. We had, at the beginning, we didn't even have a big band. We had, I think we had a bass player, a piano player, one or two percussion players, and a couple of horns. It evolved. Then it went from about a quartet or a quintet, then it became like an octet, then it became like 10 people, and eventually it evolved into a full-blown big band. But that took about, I would say, 6 or 7 years to evolve into that. Yeah, yes.
And then at the same time, was the Bronx Conexión Latin Jazz Big Band being formed, or did that come later?
No, the Bronx Conexión, I started that in 2012, which is like 9 years later. What happened there is that every semester for the big band, I was writing arrangements for the big band, for the Lehman College Big Band. And a lot of it is transcriptions, like transcriptions of some Machito, some Tito Rodriguez. So I accumulated quite a bit of music for big band. And me and Chambo were teaching at this elementary school back in 2011, 2012, and we lived close to each other. Coming home one day, I made the remark, I have so much music, I can start a band right now. He told me, why don't you? And then I said, something, you're right. If I do it, will you be in it? And he says, of course, we're friends. And so the summer of 2012, I started talking to people and notifying people that in the fall of 2012, I would start a big band. And that's how that got started, yes.
And Chembo has been with you all the way through, the great Wilson Chembo Corniel. Yes. Now, are some of the members of the big band graduates of Lehman College, or all professional musicians from the area that you've gotten to meet in your work, as a professional musician in New York City?
There are people that I know from my years of experience. The only student that I've used, and he's not with us anymore because he left to go on one of those boat cruises gigs. Mm-hmm. It was the drummer, Ron. Oh my God, I forgot his name. Forgive me. But he was there for a couple of years, and he was one of my students there in the Lehman band. But he was good because he was a drummer, and it's very hard to work with drummers if they don't know the Latino style. Mm-hmm. They can actually get in the way, because if you think about it, you don't need a drum set player in a Latino band. So like right now we're without a drummer, because I think we function just as well, if not better, without a drum set player, unless we have a funk thing or a samba or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the only student that we had in the band.
Michael Viñas is reminding you his name was Ron Bryant. Ron Bryant was his name.
Oh,
That's
yes,
Michael,
right,
Ron
yes.
Bryant. And so Dandy Rodriguez, I know, and Eddie Montalvo and others, Mike Viñas and others, have gone to Lehman to do workshops and master classes with the students. How does Dandy become part of the recording that we just heard, True Flight? ¿Cómo es que el gran Dandy Rodríguez entra en tu ambiente musical y también participa en esta grabación que escuchamos titulada Generoso del disco True Flight?
Dandy, we got him in because, first of all, my wife plays bongo in the band. And
say who your wife is. Introduce your wife to people.
Yeah, Yasuo Kimura, my wife, who plays excellent timbal, excellent bongos. That was her solo and aguacero that you heard earlier today. Mm-hmm. And we can talk about it, but let me get back to Johnny.
Yeah.
What happens is we wanted a couple of guests, so I decided to have a couple of horn guests, which ended up being Calio Roditi.
You had
Luke Backen from the Chico band, Lou Marini. And we decided to get a percussion, and Chembo suggested Johnny Rodriguez. So it was through Chembo that I got Johnny to record on the album. Even though I had played with Johnny over the years, but it was not like I could just call him up, so he could play my recording. So
that's true.
Chembo.
So here's another one, Oriente, from the same album. Oigan. El gran Dandy Rodríguez invitado en el bongo, Joe Manosi en el piano, composición y arreglo Rick Faulkner, el trombonista, con la flauta Jessica Valentin. Oriente. So Joe Manosi, who many of us know, as I mentioned before, was a member of Típica 73. He's now part of the V Project Workshop, who we will be speaking to tomorrow with Mike Viñas and the others. How does he come into your circle? ¿Cómo es que entra el gran pianista, trompetista Joe Manosi a la agrupación tuya?
I first met Joe playing with Joe Quijano at El Morocco. That was back in the 90s. I think it was just Joe Quijano, Joe Manosi, myself on drum set. Andy Gonzalez was playing bass. But I didn't really connect. I mean, I'm telling you about when I first met him. But we played there for a few times. I was subbing for someone. I later reconnected with Joe because he came to Lehman College and he offered to help out because he likes to write. So he offered to write for the Lehman band. And so naturally, when I formed the Bronx Connection, I asked Joe to join me, and he's been there ever since. He's a tremendous arranger. I have a lot to thank to Joe and for Rick Faulkner for contributing so much music to the band, because most of the music that we play is original. I do a few things, but when I write a tune, usually I give it to Joe because he can do it much faster and so much better than me. So. Great arranger.
No, I love the idea of how this works. So Lehman College has both the Latin Jazz Big Band and then the percussion ensemble that you've put together as part of the professor at Lehman College. It's interesting, when I think of New York, I think about, Bobby Sanabria, I think about some of the others, Chris Washburn and other musician academics who are doing what they're doing in New York City. Rarely do I think about Lehman as being a epicenter, if you will, of this kind of connectivity of Latin jazz, in particular Latin music, at the academic level, the institutional level, at that high level. Here, of course, in Boston, we have the New England Conservatory of Music. We have Berkeley, of which Eggy Castillo is very much part of that. Talk to me about some of the students who wind up going to Lehman College. Do we have Latino students going to Lehman College?
We have mostly Latino students going to Lehman College. A lot of them are starting to be out there playing. I have a few upcoming percussionists that are really good. That I think are going to make it in the scene. They're young right now. They're still developing, but give them another 5 to 10 years. I expect to see them out there performing. So yes, it's quite a thing. The percussion ensemble is a combination of classical and folkloric. So we do pieces, where they have to read music, stuff like that, and then we do some rumba. We do a little bit of bata, stuff like that. So it's become a classical, folkloric percussion group. Right now, the percussion ensembles are running because of the pandemic. It was closed down, hopefully temporarily, but I expect that it will start up hopefully in the fall again. The Latin band is rehearsing, but it's virtual, mostly just discussing things, doing virtual recordings like we do with the V project, stuff like that. But it's been a slow year, but I'm still there, though.
It's been a challenge. No, it's been a challenge. Yeah. I've been informed that today is not only Roberto Rena's 81st birthday, Henry Fiol también cumpleaños. Saludito al gran sonero Henry Fiol, tremendo cantante también, 74 años de edad. Así que felicidades a Henry Fiol. Tenemos como invitado Víctor Rendón, profesor, educador, autor, percusionista, que ha tocado con varias agrupaciones musicales, como también líder de su propia agrupación, The Bronx Connection Latin Jazz Big Band. También han tocado con Mongo Santamaria, como Chico O'Farrill, con Rey Santos y su orquesta y otros grupos musicales. So, tell us about playing with the great Mongo Santamaria.
Mongo, again, was one of those things where it was sort of by, not accident, but it was, destined to be. Johnny Almendra, one of my teachers and one of my colleagues, was working with Mongo for many years. And during that period, 1994, 95, he was working also with Willie Colon and Isidro Infante at the same time, and Mongo. So he was juggling gigs.
His calendar was full.
Yeah, so one day he calls me and he says, "Can you rehearse with Mongo Sunday? Or we're going to do a gig at the Blue Note, and I just need somebody to cover the rehearsal." So I was like, yeah. I started listening to Mongo when I was like 12 years old. So one of my childhood heroes. I can't wait to play, with Mongo. So I went to the rehearsal, and the whole band was there except Mongo. I believe it was Eddie Rodriguez who filled in. He was normally the bongo player. But I did the rehearsal, and it was fine. I got to play the Mongo music. I went home and forgot about it. By Tuesday, Johnny calls me and says, "Well, I can't make the Blue Note on Thursday. Can you play with Mongo?" And, I took it very calmly because I was ready, and I accepted it, and I went to do that. And that was my first time playing with Mongo. After that, I became like the regular sub. Whenever Johnny was somewhere else, I would go. And, I didn't get to know Mongo quite well. We made a few trips. I remember going to Atlanta, Georgia, to do some jazz festival. I remember going to the Boston area in a mini bus. So I did take some trips, and, I was on friendly terms with them. So, but it was a good experience because it was one of my heroes, the things that I looked up, and to be able to play with them 20 or 30 years later was just
to play with Mongo Santamaria is something that you're always going to remember for the rest of your life. Yeah. And you also play with the great arranger and saxophone player, the iconic Rey Santos Orchestra. Tell us about performing with that illustrious person.
Yeah, okay. Rey Santos, Willie Martinez, my friend and colleague, was playing with the Rey Santos. And again, it was one of those situations where he needed a sub. And with Ray, you had to read. He had charts.
Mm-hmm.
So he called me. He says, "So Victor, I know you can do it, and and I know you can handle it." So I went, and it was like an outside concert. And I went early, and Ray was there, and I asked him, "Can I see the book?" And I sat down and I looked through the music just to make sure that I knew the road maps, and then I did the concert, and that was it. It was great. It was beautiful. I loved the music, and after that, I continued to, subbing for Willie over the years. Rehearsals. As a matter of fact, one of the last gigs that I did with him was at the World Trade Center. That was in May before 9/11 in September.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a great experience. He always had good players. The last time that I played with him, he had Sonny Bravo on piano. He had Pablo Pepin. I've known Papo. I played with him with bands over the years. I remember one of the tunes I had to take a solo, and I sort of took like a 20-ish style solo, and Papo liked it. And he gets up and he hugs me. He picks me up in the air, and then drops me down. And that was coming from Papo. I took that as a great Papo.
Oh, good. So, the fact that the Bronx Conexión Latin Jazz Big Band is a big band, and that you have formed a big band at Lehman College as well. Talk to us about why big band as part of your musical portfolio. Why big band?
Okay. As I mentioned before, when during my rock and roll days, I wanted to be a jazz drummer. But at the time, I was not listening to bebop. I was not listening to Elvin Jones yet, at least Philly Joe Jones. Well, those are small groups. I was listening to the music of Buddy Rich, Stan Kenton, Woody Herman, later on Mel Lewis, Thad Jones Orchestra. When I went up to North Texas, that was the music that was being taught there. It was they had 9 what they called lab bands. They were basically what other schools call stage bands, big bands.
Mm-hmm.
And they were playing the music of those bands because they would either get it straight from Stan Ken or Woody Herman, or a lot of them are stock arrangements, and they would buy it, in the stores. So my vision was to be a big band drummer. So when I heard Puente with, whatever he had, 4 saxes, couple of bones, trumpets, I made the connection between the jazz bands, the American jazz bands, and the Latino thing. Machito also had like 4 trumpets or so, 4 saxes, maybe 5, I'm not sure. Sometimes they had trombones, but not all the time. So I've always liked big bands. It was one of my first loves. I just love the feel, when you're playing and you feel those 10 horns or whatever behind you, and then when you do kick a and you feel that power, it's just it's a high for me. It's a beautiful feeling.
And it's a high for the listener. It's a high for the dancer as well when you hear that big band kick in.
Yeah.
Especially when if it's got the arrangement. When I hear the Mambo Legends Orchestra, under the direction of Jose Madera and Dandy Rodriguez, and the arrangements that Jose Madera does for them, it's like, you hear that music and you're just like in heaven.
Yeah.
And of course, when you hear Machito and you hear Puente and you hear Tito Rodriguez, those big bands. But the other ones that you mentioned is always a great thing. David Romero dice, I detect an accent. Yes, David, from Texas. My boy's from Texas. From the Texas area, Mexican American, right there from Texas. You get that accent from time to time.
I'm from the Corpus Christi area, Robstown, Texas, para lo de Robe.
And so there you have it. So let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned where we are now, because Mike Viñas, by the way, has performed with the Bronx Conexión. How did we get the name Bronx Conexión Latin Jazz Big Band? ¿Cómo salió ese nombre? Bronx Conexión.
I live in Queens. I work in the Bronx at Lehman College, and I rehearsed the band at Lehman College. So I don't know if I had to, but I did. I asked for permission, to use one of the rooms. At the time we started every other week. So I went to the head of the department at that time, and I asked him, I'm fulfilling one of my dreams to have a big band, a professional big band. But but I don't have a place to rehearse, because to rehearse and rent a room can be a little expensive, especially you're going to Manhattan. And here's this space that I can use if they let me. So he agreed to it. But somehow we started, when the name came up, he made some suggestions. He wanted the word Bronx in there. Not that he was going to be in control of the band, but, he was working with me, letting me use the space. So to appease him and please him, I went with it. So I used the word Bronx, and then I live in Queens, so Conexión. So la Conexión de Bronx. So Bronx Conexión. That's how that came up to me.
I love it. All right. Well, that's good. So you've mentioned where we are now. I mentioned Eggy. I mentioned Bobby Sanabria. I mentioned Chris Anderson. I meant Christopher Anderson. I keep calling him that. Christopher Washburn. My God, Christopher's going to knock me out next time he sees me. I'll tell you why you keep calling me Anderson. That's the other guy. I'm Christopher Washburn, Dr. Christopher Washburn. So Dr. Christopher Washburn at Columbia. So the folks who at this moment have had to reframe how they're going to share the pedagogy of what you've been doing live in the classroom with students, especially when you have ensembles and things of that nature, because now you've had to use technology, which is going to be part of the conversation tomorrow. But give us a little premise as to how you've adapted to this challenge of COVID-19 when it comes to something like both the Lehman College Latin Jazz Big Band and Bronx Conexión Latin Jazz Big Band.
It's been tough, and I'm still learning, because at first, the COVID came in just like that, all of a sudden, like in March. As a matter of fact, I was supposed to have done a percussion ensemble recital on the 12th of March, and we played with Bronx Conexión on March the 10th. And the COVID was already up in the air. There was talk about it. When I went to Lehman the next day, they told me, we don't think you can perform, with the ensemble. So that thing just came so sudden. I just had no idea what to do in the beginning. The first semester, in the beginning, only because I didn't know what to do, I gave them assignments, like online. Read this and answer these questions, or give me your response on something that you heard, that type of thing. Then the school contacted me, and they asked me to write some kind of arrangement or get some music ready and send the students a recorded piece of music and have them play to that music with their cell phones. They then send that recording, that video recording and audio recording to me and the school, and somebody at Lehman put it all together to make, like, how it is, like a collage of musicians playing. So that was my first experience of doing a remote recording, and it came out really nice. We only did 2 tunes, but it was a lot of work for them, the person that was putting it all together. For me, it was just getting the music ready, contacted the students, making sure they did it and making sure they played correctly. So that was my first one. This next semester, in the fall, we did audio recordings, much like Mike, like what we do with Mike and the V Project. I send them tracks, and then they record them, and then they send it to me, and then I put it into, I'm using Pro Tools, and my wife actually does most of the work, Yasuyo. I have to give her credit, although she'll kill me. And we put it together, we mix it. And so this coming semester, I've been told that I, in addition to the audio, I need to do some videos. So that's in the works.
So that's going to be the new twist of what you do. So then the songs we're going to be hearing now, lo que vamos a escuchar de Mambo Boulevard. Estaremos escuchando el chocante, Mami Me Gustó. Aprende Muchacho, esa es parte también de Mambo Boulevard. ¿De dónde viene
Aprende Muchacho? Estuvo grabado por Orquesta Aragón, one of the writing players. I Dagoberto, I don't remember. It's a long name.
El violinista. Y entonces, ¿cómo hicieron esa grabación entonces? ¿La hicieron ahora durante COVID-19 en 2020 o lo habían grabado antes? Did you do it before COVID-19?
Luckily, we recorded all the parts before March, so all the tracks were in. The only parts, because I did them in sections, like trumpets first, that type of thing. The only tracks were, even mine were. Come to think, I was going to say I did mine in February, So I took a break between March and May. We just needed to do a few things like Guido, stuff like that. Even the voices were in. We did some of it remotely, where the engineer for the mixing, he hooked it up somehow where I could hear everything very clearly through the computer. And then towards the end, I went to his place with a mask and this and that, and we finished it and we mastered it. But it was a lot of it was like the mixing of it, was done remotely.
Here we go. Listen to the song. Oigan esto.
Oye muchacho, te voy a decir algo que quizá no te va a gustar.
Who's singing?
That's Jorge Maldonado.
Jorge Maldonado.
Y aquel que lleva su alma llena de fango y de mezquindad.
Who did the arrangement on this one, Joe?
It's Joe, yeah. Excellent arrangement.
Oye muchacho, le das valor a quien no lo tiene, haciéndole el juego que le conviene. Cuando despiertes,
es ya suyo Kimura o
Mongo con su buena parte. Oye muchacho. Apréndete a distinguirlo de tu enemigo. Aprende a darle la mano a quien es tu amigo. Y al otro dejar que siga por su camino. La puerta de la amistad siempre está contigo. Cuando tú la vas a abrir, entra solamente tu amigo. Aprende a darle la mano a quien es tu amigo. Siga por su camino. Oye, dale bien de esa manera. Escucha bien lo que te digo, porque una buena amistad nunca se echa al olvido. Amigos, para siempre.
Tiene swing.
¿Cómo?
Chambo.
Ajá.
La amistad nunca muere. Así nada más.
¿Quién está tocando bajo?
Mike Viñas.
¿Rey Martínez?
No, Mike Viñas.
Mike Viñas, otro amigo. Vaya, Mike.
El son cubano te estoy tocando. Apúrate, ven y goza, que
Michael Bermúdez en el coro.
Ajá. Y Chegui Atraya también.
Who's on trumpet?
Aníbal Martínez. Aníbal Martínez.
Arreglo de Joe Manossi. Jorge Maldonado en las vocales, Michael Bermúdez en el coro, el gran Chembo con el conga y el bongo.
El Yasuyo Kimura y Chagui Matraya en el coro también.
Wow. Lalo dice, bro, this is swinging. That was swinging. Joe Manossi did a great arrangement. Mike Beamer on bass. Here's another track from the upcoming album titled Mambo Boulevard, El Chocante. Let's talk a little bit about Yasuyo. So she's playing bongo. Yasuyo is from Japan. She's your wife. She's your wife.
Yes. We've been together for about 20 years or so, over 20 years. She's from Osaka, Japan.
Uh-huh. I lived in Osaka when I was a little kid, by the way.
Yeah.
So tell us about her venture into Latin percussion, in particular playing bongo.
Yasuyo is a school musician. She got her degree in Osaka, I believe, in voice as a classical. I believe I have to ask her more closely. Playing classical music. She came, but she was also into dance, some kind of a modern dance or something. Mm-hmm. So she can tell you about it more tomorrow. And from what I know, she came to New York City to study some kind of a modern dance technique. So in the process of being in those classes, she heard some percussion. I'm talking about 1990 or so, and she got the book to play percussion. So she went to Boys Harbor and wanted to study with Frankie Malabe, but Frankie Malabe by then was sick. So she ended up studying, I think, with Johnny Almendra. Mm-hmm. So she got into congas. And she became very good very quickly. When we met, we started, after we got together, we played in many bands, and she's played in all my bands. So she's developed very, very rapidly in a 20-year period. And when we got the band together in 2012, she still had a little bit of work to do in the bongo, but I knew she could do it. So, I said, you play bongo. And she took some lessons with Louis Balzo for a while, for about a year or so. And she's very studious, so she picked up on the language real quick. As a matter of fact, when we played at the Lehman Jazz Festival, I believe in 2015 or so, Mario Grillo was there. And he comes up to me, he tells me, I don't think he knew she was my wife. He says, esa mujer, she sounds like Johnny Rodriguez. And she does, because she knows that típico tap, she knows that code, so, and she's got that little swing, and she's into the bell. We're always very critical of the bells. As a matter of fact, when Johnny did our tracks on Generoso, he had this bell, and Yasuyo was there with us, and she was making comments on the bell. I love that bell. I love that bell. And Johnny said, something, I'm just going to give it to you.
Oh, my God.
So we have that bell. It's a beautiful bell.
So here's a greeting from the Commonwealth of Virginia, Reginald Vaval. Thank you, Reginald. Good to see you. So let's talk about the New Eurekan Cafe, because there's a special connection. A matter of fact, I'm going to take the liberty, with your permission, because where is it that I read something? Was it here? Was it in the album? Goodness, maybe it wasn't in the album. Did I not read something that was inspired? Oh, no, it is. This is True Flight for Víctor Rendón, New Eurekan Poets Cafe at 10 p.m. on the 9th of, let me see, that would have been May, right? No, April, January, February, March, April, May. Or June, I'm sorry, I should say June. This was June 9th, 2015. New Eurekan's Poet Cafe, 10 p.m. Inspired by Timbales Solo by Víctor Rendón on True Flight. And this is on the album. And it's a poem from the poetic collection, Oh, Whatever Day Saturday Happens to Fall. And it goes like this. Somewhere there, above it all, come the inspiration, the determination to tell the world of the reality of being. Somewhere up there, above it all, I heard the call, soul and mind blended, fear ended. And if owed, the spirit moved me, took me to a place where I could see the world from above. Nirvana, soul and heart spoke, no joke, true flight. Shone the night of the day blending into night, the sun and moon both in sight. My creative being had arrived as the music composed itself within for me to share with the world and let them know I have landed. True Flight for Víctor Rendón. This was a poem from the poetic collection, Oh, on Whatever Day Saturday Happens to Fall. This was fantastic. The fact, the New Eurekan Cafe. Yes.
That's my friend Pascual Villaronga, though.
Say that again?
That's Pascual Villaronga, my friend, who wrote that.
He was the one that wrote it. Well, he did a great job in capturing True Flight, and I appreciate the fact that you put in the album. But let's talk about the New Eurekan connection.
The New Eurekan, we're there every second Tuesday of the month, and it's a great place because it's an institute already for Latino music and other things. And so I'm really honored to be there since I believe 2014, which is going to be already like what
7 years.
7 years. So we're there, and what I like about it is that we can go there, and I don't have a club owner telling me what to play or do this or that. We go there as artists, as musicians, and we play our music the way we want it. And it's because of that place that I've been able to develop the band to where it is now. So it's como un taller, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's a working place. So it's a beautiful place. I have a lot to thank the New Eurekan for that. You know?
Yeah, it's interesting because Humberto Ramirez, a graduate of Berklee College of Music, who does Big Band Mondays, he did it for like 9-10 years. Yeah. Yerba Buena, which is a restaurant in Condado on Ashford Avenue in the Condado of San Juan. Now he moved it to the Metropole in Carolina. But that was a fixture. Every Monday he would have Big Band Mondays with a big band, and they would play. They play the tradition. They play a lot of tracks that we know so well. And from time to time, musicians would come by and visit and perform with them. But it was very much a taller because it was an opportunity for that kind of band to get together on a weekly basis and just let it out. I mean, let it out. And he had the great musicians of Puerto Rico performing there in that big band that he has. He has a new album coming out, by the way, titled Focus, and he's going to be my guest in the month of February, hopefully, if not earlier than that. But Humberto Ramirez. So I think about the need to have a place where you can go and just let it out and not have to worry about,
Because this recording that you're listening to, we played those tunes already many times at the New Eurekan, rehearsals at the New Eurekan. So they've developed. A lot of times I'll write something or Joan writes something, and I always record I videotape all my performances, and I go home and the first thing I do is listen to the recording and visually and audibly. And I'll listen to a second and say, okay, it doesn't sound quite right. I'm going to try something else. Mm-hmm. Like this one tune called Chale that at the end had like some trumpet riffs, and it was muddy, So I tried different things. It took me about 3 or 4 months to finally get it right. But that's the purpose of having, and the goodness of having a place to play.
Sure.
Because you can try your art and you can go home and change it,
Let it out.
It's like an artist changing colors,
Yeah. Here's one. Me gustó. What do we say? The arrangement? Arranger on that one?
It's Joe Manazzi.
John Manazzi again.
Manazzi, yes.
And Jorge Maldonado on both?
Same people, Jorge Maldonado, Marco Bermudez, Chagui Matraya on vocals, coro. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah.
And then you had Chembo on the congas. And Suyo Kimura on the bongo. Tell me about your baritone sax player.
Carl Watson. Carl Watson is actually not a teacher or professor at Demon College. He's like the technician. He's like the go-to man when you need something. So he's very good. Carl, if you happen to hear this, he's like a sharpshooter. Excellent reader. Plays in tune. So I depend on him a lot, not only with my band, but at Lehman College. Whenever I need something, whatever it is, whether it's scheduling, equipment, a budget, whatever, that's the man to go to. So it's my other right-hand man. Yeah.
Well, other than Joe, I would say he's the glue of that sax section. I mean, his baritone just like...
Oh yeah,
and I love the sound of the baritone with the big band arrangement. Like that was a swinging arrangement. Let me tell you right here, Lalo Pettis is saying wow, and then he says swinging band. That arrangement was John Manozzi. I mean, bendiciones, Benjamin, Dios te bendiga.
Gracias.
That arrangement, Joe is he's prolific in how he makes use of the horns, all of it, the brass, the sax, the rhythm, and everything else. And the breaks, I really appreciated how he did some of these breaks here on this particular cut, which, this is a standard, one of the classics, Mami Me Gustó, and he was able to do it. So we've got a couple of things here. There is this here where they saw Chembo y Amigos Unidos at New Yorican Cafe back in January 2019. That was with Chembo y Amigos Unidos. The New Yorican Cafe, of course, suffered a loss earlier. Now we're already in January, so I don't remember when Miguel Aguilin died. I guess it was December, right? He died in December.
It was a couple of months ago, or a month.
December. They asked, are you doing live stream shows at all at the New Yorican or anywhere else as far as your band?
The band is not. What I've been asked, Chembo and I, what we're doing is we have a Latin Jazz All-Star workshop on the same. He does it on the first Tuesday of the month. I do it on the second Tuesday of the month. I just did one this past Wednesday, and I do percussion discussions. I just did one on bells, which you can Google on YouTube. Just Google Latin Jazz All-Star New Yorican Víctor Rendón, and I think I've done 5. So they're like sort of like class/discussions, and actually they worked out very well. I mean, I missed the plane, of course, but when they asked me to do this, I'm not going to say no and then lose the gig. You know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the flow and adjust and move on. So we've been doing that. So, and then they have other activities. They have like the La Bruja, which might be poems. I'm not sure. They do things. So we've been keeping it going.
So Victor asked, who are some of the early influences growing in Texas? So I gather you mentioned rock, and there was that picture of you with long hair playing a trap set. So Ginger, you said Ginger Baker was one because of rock and roll. And then the big band jazz artists that you mentioned, Louis Belson and some of the other, Buddy Rich, et cetera, those are drummers. And then I guess once you discovered Barreto, you were hooked. So that was it.
Yeah.
You were done. You had the blood. You had the hook in you.
Yeah. Somebody just asked a question. Who were your maestros in Texas?
Yeah, that was the one. It says here, who were El Maestro's earliest influences?
I see.
Growing up in Texas.
Yeah, but I had some teachers in Texas and performers that I used to watch that influenced me. In the Corpus Christi area, we had a drummer named Junior. He was a jazz drummer and Latino drummer. He actually played with Perez Prado at some time. So he lived in Kingsville, Texas. And as a young boy, I used to see him at the Corpus Christi Jazz Festival. And he had a way of playing the bell. It wasn't like ka-ka, tiki-tika like we do here in New York or ka-ka-ka. It was like a rolling type, almost like a Mozambique. But I was too young at the time to be able to analyze it and figure it out. I wish, I went to his house a couple of times to like sort of have a lesson, but he didn't have drums in his house, and he just refused to take them out. So he tapped a couple of things on the table, but so that Junior Alvarez at North Texas, I studied with Paul Guerrero, otro Mexicano that played with the Woody Herman back in the mid 50s or late 50s or so. He was an alumnus of the 1 O'Clock Band at North Texas. Great big band jazz drummer, and he also was into Latino things. And man, I wish I had recordings of these guys on my lessons, because like him in particular, he was so great, But when you're young and you're watching them, you don't think, oh, I'm going to record or videotape. I didn't have videotape, I didn't have any money to buy a camcorder. So, but those two drummers, there was a drummer with, I think he's still alive from San Antonio that used to play with the Latin Breed. His last name was Solis. I don't remember his first name. And he used to play the polka, ranchera, huapangos, but with a very modern, up-to-date, funky sound. He was like a Tex-Mex Steve Gadd, and Steve Gadd was not even in the scene yet, Steve Gadd was an upcoming drummer here in New York at the same time that this guy was coming. So he had a very funky, fluid, jazzy feel. And I'll be meaning to look him up one of these days and interview him. But those are some of the influences. Besides the classical stuff, I actually played in the Corpus Christi Symphony for 1 year before moving up to the north. So I've got some influences in Texas that made a big difference in my life,
Well, I'm glad that they did. The last question for you, David Romero says, did you ever live in LA?
No, I've been there a couple of times. That was one of my options. Go to New York, go to LA, go to Florida, or get into your army. I got it.
It was one of those heads, New York, tails, LA. I guess heads won, and you wound up going to.
Just by chance, I came to New York.
Well, Victor, I just want to say thank you for spending these hours with us here on Con Salsa. I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow as part of our conversation with, and also joined by your wife, Yasuyu Kimura, who'll be joining us tomorrow as well. I'm looking forward to the conversation as to how we've adapted to, using technology and what best practices we have learned from 2020 that may be of use for us in 2021 when it comes to technology and music. But the band, I'm loving it, and when the album comes out, count me in as far as somebody who will help you share this music, and we'll have another conversation once you have the full album blown up with all the tracks on it. But congratulations on your great work.
Thank you.
Thank you for being part of this great family, and thank you for joining us and contributing to another great session of music and information. God bless you, man.
I want to thank everybody, all my brothers and sisters out there. Thank you for listening, and thank you for the good compliments. Gracias.
You got it, my brother.
Makes me feel good.
My regards. We'll see you tomorrow, mañana. Bueno, mi gente, ahí escucharon nuestro amigo Víctor Rendón. Wonderful talk. I thought I was one in your library rooms with the two of you as I listened. Thank you. Trax Killer. David dice, God bless you, Victor, and thank you for sharing your talents. Ceci and Johnny in California. Next time you're in California, please stop by our house in Lakewood. There you go, Ceci. I'll make sure he gets your address. Victor, muchas gracias. Como siempre, mi hermanito. Dios te bendiga. Mario, saludo a ti y gracias a ti también, Mario. Francisco Torres ya y yo estamos en comunicación, así que te daré más información sobre eso. De cualquier manera, mi gente, ahí estuvieron Yoko. Dice aquí Yoko, aplauso. Muchas gracias, Yoko. Lorick dice, looking forward to playing your new Bronx Connection on WDNA. Saludos desde Miami. So, Victor, there you go. They're going to play it on WDNA. And I'm looking forward to it as well. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, for being part of the Con Salsa family. I love you. God bless you. Stay safe when you go out. Wear a mask. Wash your hands. 6 feet distance. This is Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. So take a moment to reflect and see how you can be of service to make this world a better place. And in particular, after the last 4 years and in particular the last 2 weeks, but we're getting close. This Wednesday, we'll start a new chapter. Until then, tomorrow we'll be back with our dear friend Mike Viñas, who I mentioned before, leads the V Project Workshop, and we'll be talking to him and 9 other of his colleagues, musicians and educators, as to how we learn from technology going into 2021 when we're doing the music that we're doing. So God bless each and every one of you. Saludos, bendiciones. Dios los bendiga. Hasta mañana. De nuevo repito, si van a salir, por favor, 6 pies de distancia física, mascarilla, lávense las manos lo más posible y de esa manera todos podemos compartir una vida sana, si Dios permite. Estaremos con ustedes entonces mañana comenzando a las 4. Hasta entonces, esta noche a las 10 hora de Boston pueden escuchar el programa con salsa WBUR 90.9 FM o en el internet wbur.org. So until tomorrow, you can listen to Con Salsa Tonight. It's a show that I'm dedicated to Dr. Martin Luther King, and then 4 hours dedicated to the memory of Ángel Rubén Cachete Maldonado. A year after his passing, that was on the 10th of January 2020. Now, a year later, you'll hear Luis Perico Ortiz, you'll hear Jerry Medina, you'll hear Pablo Lindo Rosario, and you will also hear John Dandy Rodriguez talking about the great Cachete Maldonado. That's tonight on radio for 4 hours. The first hour dedicated to the one and only Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King and his memory. Until tomorrow, I love you. God bless you. Hasta mañana. Latino, defiende lo tuyo con orgullo. Todos unidos entre amigos. Uno para todos y todos para uno. Que Dios los bendiga. Chao. Nos vemos.